Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Diane Mandle. Mandle. Diane Mandle. How do you say your name?
Diane Mandle.
Thank you. She says it the French way, so thank you. So just so people can know you, I'm going to go ahead and just read your short bio. So, Diane Mandle is an internationally known author, recording artist with Sounds True, Tibetan bowl practitioner, and educator, and the only state certified practitioner instructor in California. Diane has given over 250 educational concert programs in 32 states, as well as in India, Costa Rica, Mexico, and France. She's been a frequent guest presenter at the Museum of Making Music, California State University, San Marcos, the Golden Door, the Deepak Chopra Center, Rancho La Puerta, and NPR radio and television station, KPBS. She is a featured expert in the video series Tao Living in Balance, along with healers such as Dr. Wayne Dyer and John Gray. Diane owns and operates the Tibetan Bowl Sound Healing School, which operates in the US and in France. She was part of the integrative therapy team at the San Diego Cancer Center and developed a successful sound healing program for veterans with PSD. All right. So I know you've had quite a journey. You didn't just come to be like the best in Tibetan music and everything. So
That's Tibetan.
Tibetan,
Tibetan,
see, you
yes.
have to correct me all over the place.
No problem.
Tibetan and Tao, I think I'm not saying if that one's right either.
Got right.
Okay, Tibetan. So tell us about you. Tell us your story.
Well, I'll make it, I've had an incredible life, and I'm very lucky to have been blessed with a bicultural family. My mother was a French Catholic prima ballerina. My father was a New York Jew. So we had a very mixed childhood. I was back and forth to France, and we traveled to Europe every single year. So I was introduced to many different languages. My mother only spoke French. My father spoke American. So I was raised bilingual, which also opened my, when you're raised in two languages, it's not only the language, it's also the culture. You have, so you develop a larger perspective of the world, which was which for me was quite a gift and is still quite a gift. I went on to do my work in theater and dance, and then later, because I had traveled so much, I got a master's degree in international administration, culture shock, all of that kind of thing. And I worked, somehow or other, I have worked in jobs that always just came to me. I don't think I ever applied for a job. Uh, One of them was a director of a family center, and then the director of the Chamber of Commerce for 4.5 years in Amherst. And did I know anything about business? No, but I learned as I went, and they hired me for my energy and my creativity, I guess. And then I was recruited by the American Cancer Society to be a regional director for Western Massachusetts. So I've done some pretty traditional work. I worked at the University of Massachusetts also in a department that was really about world theater, and it was called New World Theater. And so have been introduced to just a wide range of cultures and work. Um, at one point, one of the things that was very important to me was really helping people to change. And when I was working in my more traditional jobs, we did the same thing that big corporations do, is send their employees to do staff development. But then the employees came back, and because there was really no follow-up and no support of what they had, the new stuff they had learned, they just sort of went back, and that really bothered me a lot. And I wanted to do something that was a lot more visceral, that really created change in people with a lot of support. And so I started a coaching, learning about coaching, and I went to do polarity therapy. I got a degree in working with energy balancing and polarity therapy, and met my teacher at a whole health expo, where I was doing polarity therapy and coaching, and this guy next to me happened to have all these Buddhist statues and Tibetan bowls, and we were there for 3 days, and we got to know each other and decided to trade sessions. And when he when he conducted a Tibetan bowl sound healing session on me, it literally blew my mind. And above me during the session, I saw a big Buddha. And when I came out of the session, I said, when I could finally talk, I said, I had this big Buddha above me the whole time, but I think he was sick because he was blue. Well, any Buddhist knows that the blue Buddha is the medicine Buddha. And this is a Buddha that had come to me. And this was my sign that I needed to learn this modality and to integrate it into the work that I'd already done. So that's what I did. I studied with him exclusively one-on-one for 2.5 years, and then moved to California to begin where I started doing working one-on-one with people. But I noticed and it was so effective that at that point in 2000, hardly anybody knew about Tibetan bowls and sound healing. So I created these concerts, these educational concerts, where I could perform concerts, but I also could educate the participants in what sound healing was. And one thing led to the other. I opened a school to raise the bar of what a sound healing session really should be, and what practitioners really need to know to be effective, and not just do something because it's a fad. And that's what happens a lot in this country.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, um, talk more about the Tibetan bowls and what they do.
So sound healing, Tibetan bowls come from the culture of Tibetan Buddhism, which is rooted in which is rooted in the Bon tradition, which preceded Tibetan Buddhism. So it's thousands of very, very, very old. And the sound healing works through synchronicity and resonance. And there's a grouping of different instruments. And some of the instruments of the sacred sound family are there to awaken dormant energies, specifically community, truth, and compassion. Some of the instruments are there to move energy. And we're working with the feminine and masculine energies. And then the bowls are there to harmonize energies. So what do they do? Well, on a biological level, when you're playing these instruments, you are establishing resonance with them. They are recalibrating and your right and left brain so that they're working together. You're working with cardiorespiratory synchrony, which is creating synchrony between your brain waves and your heart rate and your respiratory rate. And when those frequencies are working together, that's really like the petri dish from where physical healing can happen, rather than you have all these different frequencies going on. On a more spiritual level, the bowls are there to create healing, but healing, we're talking about emotional healing, physical healing, consciousness transformation, all the different aspects of healing. So I always say it is really about a spiritual awakening that affects all quadrants of our body. and mind and spirit.
So if someone wanted to experience this, do they need to find a practitioner? If they listen like on, everything's on YouTube. If they listen to something, digital like on YouTube or someplace, does it still work the same?
Well, anything digital takes away from the actual experience. But if you have had an actual physical experience where the bowls are placed on and around your body, or you've been in a room and been to a sound bath, then there's a certain amount of cellular memory that takes place. And so after that, when you listen, sure, it can be relaxing. It will certainly affect you if you've got, good earphones and yes, that uh, but it's always better to have an actual physical uh, experience first, if possible.
Mhm. So if are you in California still?
I'm in California, yeah.
So if someone is in California, of course they can come see you, but what if they're in Minnesota or somewhere else? How would we find someone that does what you do?
Well, I have a school. I opened my school in 2008, and I've trained hundreds and hundreds of practitioners. So I think finding someone, there are a lot of practitioners out there, and a lot of them, I'm sorry to say, are not very well trained. I do have, first of all, people can get in touch with me, and if I have someone who's gone through the program who I can recommend, um, on my website, there is a directory, and on the directory, it has a listing of practitioners who I can recommend in different states. I don't know if I have anybody in Minnesota, um, but also, I mean, but people can find and I can help them ask the right questions so that they can find someone who's a good practitioner.
So I've heard there's different kinds of bowls. Like some people say they have these crystal bowls. Now, is the
That has
crystal
nothing
bowl
to
the
do.
same thing? Yes. So explain
They're
the
a different
difference.
instrument. They have the ancient. I only work with the ancient bowls, which means that at least the ancient bowls are that I work with are at least 120 years old. The crystal bowls and they were made in and around Tibet, and they were made in a very specific way. Um, and so they were hand hammered. They were when the metallurgists who found them went into the Himalayas to get the metals, brought them back to the monasteries where they were living. The monks would be singing and chanting prayers and blessings into them. Now, that the one of the basic principles of Tibetan Buddhism is the interrelationship of all things. And so that's something that's imbibed in the DNA of these instruments through the monks, through what they're also doing. Um, the crystal bowls have nothing whatsoever to do with Tibet. I'm not saying that they're not effective instruments, but they're not they're not the same. People can give sound baths. They have a very different resonance. The crystal bowls are mostly one bowl is calibrated for one energy center. With the Tibetan bowls, you have a whole range of harmonics and notes in every bowl that the human ear can hear, animals can hear even more. And if you put a chronometer inside of one of those when you're playing, it goes all over the place because it's like every note contains all other notes. So there's a huge range. And when you're working one-on-one with someone, what you're doing is you're listening to the harmonics, you're listening to the sounds and the harmonics of what each each bowl individually is telling you, and then what they're telling you working together. So it's like working with islands and also keeping in mind that you're working on a continent. So if I put a bowl on somebody's heart and the high harmonic, I don't hear the high harmonic, I know that I need to do something to to invite the full voice of that bowl because it's giving me information from the body The body or the emotional body is giving me informational through. So I have to, first of all, understand what that information is, and then I have to know what to do about it.
Oh, it sounds very precise. Like, so
It is.
do the practitioners have to like be able to hear all the sounds, or are they measuring the sounds, or they just have to naturally from practice learn to hear the sounds?
It takes practice to hear a lot of harmonics. It's a new language. It's
Mhm.
training your ear.
How long does it usually take someone to be competent enough to start actually working with someone where they'd be effective?
Well, I have 4 stages in my program. It's the introduction and then 3 advanced stages. So there's a lot of different things. In the intro workshops that we do, we're learning all the basic principles. That's what's, and then whatever you do with that, but that's like the most important things. And then the advanced stages are always building on the basic principles. Um, so normally it takes about 18 months to 2 years of working because you're either looking at videos and practicing and then refining your skills and then going on to a different, and then you're keeping logs, which I look at, and I work with you with those logs, and there's some books to read, and I mean, it's a real school, it's a real education. It's not just go to a weekend and then start playing out, trying to heal people. It's not like that. A lot of schools are, but not mine.
Mhm. Got it. So is there a way that you could be damaging to someone? Let's say, you were using the example of putting it on their heart, and let's say you're just learning and you're not so good at it. Is there a way that it would hurt the person?
So in we're working with patterns of sacred geometry and directionality. So if you're working with someone who comes into anxiety and you're playing from the bottom up, you're just bringing a lot of energy into that. You don't want to do that. You want to do,
Mhm.
right? So yes, you can do damage, and the basic principle, another basic principle of Tibetan Buddhism is do no harm. So we have to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
There are patterns, there are ways that you play that expand energy. Some ways that you play there's some that expand, some that energize, and some that calm down. So you have to know all of that.
So does a person typically like lay on like a massage table, or how does that work?
Well, I work on the floor on a mat, and some people work on massage tables that have out contraptions on them because you have bowls all around and on your body.
I see. And then how long does a session last?
Well, if you're a student, probably about an hour and a half, but my sessions are an hour.
Okay. And the person during the session, they're feeling very relaxed. Or is anybody like anxious coming in, or?
Well, people come in with their stuff. People come in with whatever it is that they're coming in with, and it's up to me to be able to direct and guide them to what the core issue is. And I have a system for directing people to help them recognize the core issue, because there are not that many core issues, but each one of them manifests. It's like a sun, if self-honor, so lack of self-honor is a core issue, then that's going to manifest. Or probably people are not going to be making good nutritional decisions. They're probably not going to have very good relationships, maybe can't keep a job because they procrastinate. I mean, there's so many different symptoms. I don't work with symptoms. I work with core issues because we can't release what we don't know, what we don't own. So that's my job, is to help the person see where their blind spots are, own it, so that then they can do either releasing or they can energize and some people are coming in. I mean, there's the whole range.
Mhm. So while you're doing the bowls, like, are you talking to them and telling them, to breathe, or are you telling them this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm seeing?
Well, I'm inviting them. I'm inviting them to breathe in the beginning. We are creating an intention together that will support what their core issue is. And I have in the intro, I'm mostly not doing a lot of talking. I talk a little in the beginning to just help establish some breathing um, and the intention. In the advanced workshops, there are visualizations and there are exercises and all of these things help the the client start to take responsibility for their own healing because they're the healer, not me. I'm just giving them some tools that they are using. So all the breathing exercises and the visualizations are things that really help to start um, uh, with their involvement um, until they can walk away understanding what they need to do and the changes that they make over time.
So do people come in like a certain amount of times a week, or is it just a one-time thing, or is it they just come in like for example, my chiropractor, I just see him once in a while now because I'm good. So how does that work?
And we either unlearn patterns of behavior or we learn new patterns over the natural time frame is a month. And so I see people every week for 4 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks. And by that time, they have taken on what they need to take on. And then I'll see them once in a while, and then I come in for a tune-up.
Got it.
But
Okay.
normally seeing a person, it's like with anything, we learn by repetition. That's
Mhm.
how we learn.
Really. So I'm very curious about the cancer patients you've worked with. How do you work with them, and do they all have the same core issues, or they have all different core issues?
They do have different core issues, but one of the things over working with cancer patients over 4.5 years that I observed um, and is that a lot of cancer patients are very good at giving out and giving of themselves and helping others and and need and not very good at self-love and asking for help and saying no and boundaries. And so it's a kind of a one way, and cancer is something that gives them a reason to stop and take care of themselves. Hopefully most of us don't need to go there, don't need to have an excuse, don't need to have a justification or a reason to take care of ourselves. The hope is that we learn without having the cosmic 2x4 on our heads. We learn what I call the cosmic 2x4. And so what I did learn though also is that there are a few things with cancer patients that that the that the bowl sessions helps very, very much to help them to transition from being a victim to being a witness of their situation so that they can interact with it differently. And that's huge. Also, a lot of times it was the only time that they got to such a deep state of relaxation that they were cut off from their pain. It gave them respite for a little while. And that's also huge.
It
Uh,
is huge.
for some people, they just needed to sleep. They would come in sleeping, that going to such a deep level of sleep for an hour because of what's happening with these instruments is kind of like being asleep for 8 hours. I mean,
Mhm.
it's so totally restful. So
Right.
people come in differently. The other thing that is very common was a sense of betrayal, that their body was betraying them. So there's fear, so there's anger, there's frustration with all the different systems. And this is really something that has helped them to come to terms with how they need to be with this situation.
Got it. Yeah. Because, I mean, some cancer, there's a big range of cancer patients from people who, they have their treatment and they get better. And then the other end where they're near death. Have you ever seen people kind of come back from using the bowls where they're at least getting better than they were before? Or is it just a temporary thing so they feel better temporarily?
Well, I would say feeling better is just a small part of it. I'm talking about a sense of well-being.
Mhm.
And that's more than just the physical. And I have seen both. I have worked with people who have completely come back and are out and about, very much healed in all the aspects. And I've also been and worked with people who have passed on. The people who have passed on have more fighting it. The people who are still here more are have learned to work with it. And like I said, we are not our condition. We are so much greater than whatever the condition was. And that is also something that was very important in my work in the prison system, when people really get that. And when we get what happens when we marry our emotions to our positive visualization and positive thinking. It's nice to think good thoughts, but that's not what helps with change. What helps with change is marrying the emotion of joy and faith and courage and well-being with the vision. That's what, because we are vibrational, we're vibrational beings. So we have to match what we want with our vibration. And just exactly the same as the person who creates can smash crystal by creating the vibration of the crystal and then start smashing crystal. The same, that's how we operate too, but most of us don't know it.
Mhm. Yeah, so when people study with you, do they actually physically come to where you are? Or I know you said it was in your bio that you had some things with I forgot the name where you had some with sound uh
Sounds true.
sounds true. Yes.
Well, Sounds True. What I have through Sounds True is one of my CDs. Is Tibetan bowl sound healing,
Oh,
through Sounds True. Um, I have an intro workshop, and that's the one that people do specifically. It's in person. That's the. It's also available online for people who can't do it in person, but that's really the best way. I just did one in Seattle, and my counterpart, um, who who was a student and now is a practitioner, is he's taking over doing the intro workshops in person in Seattle, and I'm going to be working with the advanced students, or the students who've done the one-on-one, who've done the intro groups with him in person.
yeah, it seems like you would have to do it in person.
Well,
I
you
just
have to start in person, but after that, you get plenty of support. You have videos and handouts and Zoom classes. So there's a lot. Once you get the basics, the principles, you can build on that.
mhm. But that makes sense too. I mean, just handling the bowls and the technique of your hand,
Yes,
can you
all
do
of
it on
that.
video? Yes, but I think I would want to see it. I would want someone watching me to tell me, yes, it's the right pressure. That's the right tempo. That's the right, uh, where you're doing it properly.
Right. Yep.
So, and then also you wrote some books. So what did you write books about?
Well, the first book is Ancient Sounds for a New Age, and that is really a practitioner focused. It's about sound healing, And it's about healing, what we bring to healing in general. And then specifically, it's about sound healing with the Tibetan sacred sound instruments. And it's a lot of graphics, like, hundreds of pages with protocols and graphics and things like that. And that's what that one is about. And then I have two other books, The Gift in the Wound and The Light Behind Bars. And The Gift in the Wound it's a memoir and an interactive guide for more positive living. So I took situations in my life that, many of them which were challenging, because I really feel that very strongly that when we look at our life and we want to label something as bad or trash, what that really is compost.
Mhm.
There's no trash. It's all compost. And what creates the artistry of a happy and good life is to be able to find the gift in any wound and any difficult situation. And so I wrote this book, and at the end of most chapters, I ask the reader a bunch of questions. And by the end of that, they can start to write their own book, to write their own story. And so that's why I say it's an interactive guide. Um, and it's the stories that helped me get to where I am today. And I was a welfare mom. I was a single welfare mom for many years. So I know what the victim mentality is like. And I know about getting out of the victim mentality. And I know how to guide people, how to go from that. And that's what this book is about. This is The Light Behind Bars. I worked for quite a while. It's transforming consciousness with sound. I worked in the prison system. I worked with incarcerated veterans, um, who I did group sound healing sessions with. There were like 70. I worked with uh, two groups, and they were like about 72 veterans, divided into two groups. And I introduced them to meditation, and to sound meditations. And for veterans especially, your regular meditation is very difficult, to just turn it off. But using the intermediary of sacred sound, it was something that literally took them from. I remember the first day I went in there, and it was like, okay, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes and listen. And they're like, there's no friggin' way we're closing our eyes for this. We're in
Uh-huh.
the prison. We don't close our eyes for anything.
Uh-huh.
10 minutes into the session,
They're nodding off.
putting off, closing their eyes, and by the end of the session, the they had left their bodies, they had left their minds, and their only question was, when can you come back?
Mhm.
So I kept records of how they felt when they came and how the session, and so this is a lot of their voices. This is their voices saying what sound healing meant to them and how they were changing. But I also worked with also voices of cancer patients, and also voices, because the bars, here they were literal bars, but the bars are unconscious behaviors. The bars are the fear, the anxiety, the self-limiting behaviors that we all have. So it's about that too.
So cool. Thank you so much. So, if people wanted to connect with you, where do they find you, your courses, your books?
www.soundenergyhealing.com. My websites are kind of being remade right now, but they can find me on that. Anybody can email me at soundenergyhealing@gmail, and the tibetanbowlschool.com also. And they can, yeah, I have lots of, I have concerts digital, I have concerts that people can purchase and listen to. I have a lot of instructional material. I have CDs, I have books, I have workshops, I have people want to purchase instruments, I can help guide them through that. Lots of different educational and learning and enjoyment tools.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So now I have a personal question for you.
Sure.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
I think, I don't think I know. It is such an honor to witness the empowerment when people are starting to feel empowered. That is, I do the concerts and I do the workshops and I do one-on-one sessions, and watching somebody really wake up to their own power and stop giving it away to other people or whatever. That for me is the most rewarding. That's the rewarding thing in my life.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for being on today and telling us all about Tibetan bowls and healing. And it's been wonderful.
I'm so glad. It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Get really connected to what you love and do what you love, and don't let fear. Work from a place of love and not fear, and notice what you're noticing. Notice when you're operating from a place of fear, and 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 do your best to come out of that and come to a better place. And I think that when we do that, that's when the universe comes and meets us. When we have the courage to face our fear and to transmute our fear, and we come from a place of love, that's when the universe works its magic and comes to meet us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, you take care.